Kind of what I'm going to talk about today is a brief intro about myself and my environment and some kind of context setting information so that the actual project will make sense to folks that aren't familiar with what we were trying to accomplish. So I'll do some of that. I'll talk about the goals of the project, some approaches we took, and then I'll do some screenshots because, the whole live demo course thing probably is working really well here. And then I'll close up with just kind of what our next steps are going to be on the project. So I'm a former software developer. I've done web applications, Unix administration, all that kind of stuff. I did things like that for about 15 years and actually kind of got bored. So I decided to look into some other careers, and lo and behold, librarianship was it, strangely enough. So I'm currently employed with the Oregon State Library. I was actually very lucky. I landed my dream job right out of graduate school. So I've been with the State Library for about 3 years, almost exactly. And right when I started, Plone fell into my lap in another related project. So I've been doing Plone for 3 years. I'm what's kind of categorized as an integrator or customizer. I can read Python and dink with it, but I don't really write code. I can fumble my way through the templates and stuff like that. But I primarily am really good at understanding the problem that is trying to be addressed and finding good fits with Plone and Plone add-on products. So that's a lot of what this talk will cover. My two key Plone projects are one called Plinkit, which I've talked about quite a bit before, basically providing Plone-based websites for public libraries that otherwise couldn't host their own website or have problems maintaining their current website. And then the project I'm going to talk about today is OSLIS 2.0. Again, very high-level case study. We're not going to look at any code, but if you have questions, definitely just raise your hand and I'll answer them as I'm able. So what does OSLIS stand for? Because I'll say OSLIS because I'm not going to say Oregon School Library Information System ever again today. So that's what it stands for, and a lot of this will make more sense in a few minutes. The other thing you need to know is what is information literacy? This is the idea of how people actually do research and learn how to do research in a good way that's going to get them to a place of good results. And in the K through 12 environment, this is based on the Big Six, though there's actually more than 6 things listed here, kind of the Big Six approach that came out of the Information School at the University of Washington. So basically, learning how to define your research question, how you go through the search and research process, evaluating the information that you gather, note-taking, organizing it, things like that, learning how to cite your sources properly, and presenting the results. And again, this is focused for the K through 12 crowd. The other thing I'm going to talk about, or will come up in this talk, is something called electronic databases. This is not like your SQL database where you're storing numbers and data like that. These are databases filled with electronic versions of journals. Some of them are consumer-like magazines, so when I go to my public library website, I can actually look at an issue of like Horse and Rider online. So it's that kind of stuff, as well as more scholarly academic type topics. This content usually gets licensed out through third-party vendors. So publishers more often than not will license it to a third-party vendor, and then the end consumer actually gets the content from that vendor. Occasionally, the content will go directly out from the publisher. And often the stuff is made available through various library types. You'll also run into corporations that use them as well. Law firms are a great example because there's like LexisNexis. You may have heard of that. So it's that kind of stuff. The other piece to know is that in Oregon, especially, this was more true 10 years ago, where we had what is known as teacher librarians. So they're not just, the librarians just aren't sitting in the school library, they're also pairing up with teachers and or doing actual instruction with the students on how to do research. Okay, so that's kind of the big framework there. So back in 1997 through 2000 when the web was exploding, and hard to believe it was only 10 years ago, the concern came up that school administrators thought, oh wow, all this information is out there on the web now, so we really don't need to teach students how to find things or find information. And librarians were going like, whoa, just a minute, not everything you read on the web is, should be, I don't know, taken at face value. And so there was a real need seen in Oregon throughout the state to how do we get the teacher librarian to continue to be the expert and lead students through that research process. And what they came up with was a library portal as a gateway to those online resources that I talked about, both the, the free stuff that you get on the web, as well as the electronic versions of those journals, and then put it within that information literacy framework. So really to pair those things up. So you weren't just going to the databases, or you just weren't reading about how to do research. Everything was right there for the students. Initially, and this is where things get a little fuzzy, we're actually having an issue, I discovered, with institutional memory. Some of the key people that were on the project aren't with us any longer, and the one person who is, her hard drive crashed. So like a lot of the historical information she had is gone. But we believe that this was kind of on the right side, that's kind of the initial website design, very graphical, getting people to various either tutorials or the actual resources right away, some help information on how to navigate the site or who to contact for assistance. Also, these dates may be a little off. In 2005, a new site was launched to kind of bring it a little bit more up to date and help folks get to more and more resources that were available, both through this actual gateway as well as out on the web. What you'll notice, is it the next one? Yeah, so what you'll notice is the primary focus was, again, on the left were the tutorials and lessons for the students, and again, following that same process. And what's nice, too, when you think about this, once a school starts using a site like this, the students, as they go through their educational experience, they're presented with the same process over and over again. So this has been really actually a wonderful project. So on the left are the steps to help the students, and then on the right are the actual resources to those databases. Oftentimes those databases are age appropriate, so they tend to be from kindergarten to second grade or kindergarten to fifth grade, and then sixth grade and higher. So to make this project happen initially, there were quite a few partnerships involved. Kind of halfway through the project, the website was hosted at the University of Washington, and they also provided that version of the website you just saw. But really the project was managed by what is now known as the Oregon School Librarians, Association of Oregon School Librarians, and they have a committee that manages the actual website. And then, just to throw in a little more fuel for the fire, it's all funded by the Oregon State Library. So large number of stakeholders, just even in the immediate circle, and then of course, the people that we're actually serving include the K through 12 instructors as well as the students. So lots of people involved. So just real quick about the technology and process that we were at by 2005. The site was built using PHP and a lot of JavaScript, actually, about 5,000 lines of JavaScript for the bibliography tool. So kind of shaky there. We had a lot of cooks in the kitchen trying to, say what should be on the website, how it should be used, how it should be promoted. And we also had a huge bottleneck in the system in that because it was hosted in the technology pieces, the content, actually getting the content to the site or any new features, was being managed by the folks at the University of Washington, and they were being directed by a committee. So, things weren't always happening in a timely manner. And to add another little twist to it, it was usually a grad student that was actually doing the technology piece, and that grad student would be allowed to work on the project for 1 year. So, this kind of continual turnover of trying to keep things moving, having a lot of people involved, wasn't really making things as smooth as folks wanted. Additionally, we're kind of falling behind. In fact, even at 2005, when the site was launched, it was already kind of looking a little dated. We were just kind of hitting into that whole Web 2.0 thing. I try not to use that word a lot, but you know what I mean, right? So we were already kind of falling behind by the time this site got launched. On top of which, over the last 10 years, we've had a decreasing number of school librarians. As the budgets have been cut throughout Oregon, schools have been hit particularly hard, and for whatever reason, school librarians are like, some of the first to go. So having a website where students can do self-directed research is becoming more and more important. Here again, the idea that we really weren't updating with new technology in a timely manner. So this whole idea of having students be able to participate on a static website, how do you make that happen? So just a lot of things were kind of coming into focus. And keep in mind that a lot of students are becoming more technology savvy than their teachers. So if you want to entice your students to do research, you can't be using really old-fashioned tools. You really got to get them interested, and you kind of have to trick them into it sometimes. So, all of this we were very aware of. So what did we want to do about it? Well, we definitely wanted to try and get more student participation on the website, even if it was just their own individual work that they were able to save and keep track of on the website. We wanted still to support the still support the teacher librarians as well, and really make it everybody able to just contribute content, be it, hey, I found this great resource on this topic, or hey, here's my presentation on something I researched, the full spectrum of things that they could do on a website. So the way we went about trying to figure out how to do this is we held a brainstorming session. It was pretty key to get some, quote, younger folks involved. So we hand-selected some experts, and we kind of handpicked who was going to participate. Again, part of the issue being that teachers are already so stressed and overworked for time, they don't have the time, or they're not given the time to get training and keep up to date with technology. So we were trying to pull in people that are recently out of library school, for example. And so during the brainstorming session, we totally told them, think blue sky. Don't even think about the old site. What, crazy stuff do you want to have happen on the new site? And I can't even remember where I heard this now. I said I really encourage the rip-off and duplicate approach. So if you've seen something somewhere, regardless if it really was a K through 12 application, don't be afraid to speak up and tell us what it is, and we'll see if we can't duplicate it. So after a full day of brainstorming, we just threw out all kinds of ideas. We put them all up on Post-it notes, and we did the whole, kind of categorize them. And then everybody got a couple of 7 or 8 dots to vote on their key things. And so at a high level, these were the priorities that we came up with. We really wanted to get to the point where the student was the audience, not to necessarily drop supporting the teacher stuff and the librarian stuff, but really, students are going to MySpace, are going to Facebook. We wanted kind of that thing to happen with the new site. We definitely wanted some personalization. The current site, nobody can log in, or the old site, no one could log in. You couldn't, have friends or whatever, or share ideas through the website. So we really wanted to have that personalization aspect. We wanted students, of course, to be able to create their own content as well as share the content they created. And we still wanted to incorporate, whenever possible, new tools that would support their research process. A little bit lower on the list, and these are things that we're still looking for, are kind of that social web aspect. So again, maybe a student has created a video presentation of something they researched. It'd be really great if they could upload that to the website and share it with all their friends in their class. And then the last thing was, and I think I'm not as familiar with the K through 12 curriculum, but I believe in high school at some point, or maybe a little bit younger, they do a research topic that's based around Oregon history or something to do with Oregon. And so there was this great idea that every year you have hundreds of kids creating all these presentations about Oregon. Wouldn't it be neat if we had kind of like a student research site or part of the website that could just kind of have all of these presentations available? So moving forward with the design and the development, kind of answering the question, why Plone and why Plone 3.0. Part of it was that with my previous experience in Plone, having been at the State Library for about 2 years at this point, and knowing that we really wanted to go with a content management system, it seemed kind of like a no-brainer to see if we could actually use Plone for this, to at least start there. So we had some institutional knowledge. We had limited resources, so going with another solution wasn't our ideal. And frankly, the overall user experience for content editors in Plone is just really fantastic. How many of you have actually used Plone? So you've experienced that? Yeah. When I work with, not with this project per se, but on my other project, I tell folks, if you can use a web browser and something like Microsoft Word, you can have a website. So it's really quite that simple. And then we really wanted to be able to take advantage of Plone's built-in features. So things like workflow were really important. Permissions, maybe you want to limit who can see presentations by class. So just because a student's uploaded a presentation doesn't necessarily mean everybody can see it. And also to have user registration and kind of know something about those users. And the other great thing about Plone, of course, is that it has a large number of add-on products. So pretty much anything you want to do with a fairly mainstream website, you can get done with Plone. And that it's actually pretty easy to create new content types. Are you guys kind of familiar with that idea of content types and creating new ones? So, and then the other thing we decided was definitely to take the build-out approach when actually developing the site. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a really great way to specify where to get your code, which version of the code to get, how to put it all together, and actually create your site within the Zope environment. The great thing about this is once you've created that recipe, it's very easy to replicate it in a completely different system or on the same system but have a completely different site. So this way we actually have a production, staging, and test version of our website all on one server. And it's very easy to keep them in sync. So some of the products and things that we did in order to create the site with Plone is we used something called Remember. And what's really great about Remember is that in Plone by default, a member is kind of a one-off thing. And it's not very, you can't manipulate it easily. You can know who's there. You can change your password and email address and those kinds of things. But you can't really, when somebody registers on the site, they either have their user ID and login or they don't. There's no in between. So with something like Remember, you can actually start to manage your members much more like their content. And so, for example, when somebody signs up, they can be in a pending state, and maybe they have limited access to the site during that time until they're actually approved by somebody to have complete access. You get a much better search for your users, membership search, yeah. So your user search is much more functional than the default. And for that member view, you get all of those same default kind of functionalities. So you get that view tab, you get that edit tab, and you get that properties tab. So it really just expands what you can do with a member. And in our case, we wanted students to be able, students and teachers actually, to select from a group of avatars or little logos for their user IDs. And we also wanted to track their school affiliation. So all of that was done using Remember and Membrane. And that's probably the biggest used add-on we have currently. It's worth noting also that Remember will help you create additional roles and groups. For our particular site, we really wanted an elementary kind of K through 5 group, and then the 6 through 12, and then teachers that also correspond to that. And then kind of the overall umbrella of the site management for the content comes from the site and content administrators. We had some custom content types created. These are kind of funky names, but the idea is that since you have those research steps, there are certain resources that can support those steps at each point. So to kind of create a content type that would allow teachers to upload resources that were related to that particular step in the research process. Sometimes that content is already in one place on the site. You just point to it from different other areas of the site, or sometimes you're actually pulling in external resources. So it's just a nice way to manage supporting materials for a particular stage in the research process. The Edu tool has been developed, but I don't think we've actually used it yet, so I don't know what's going on with that one, but the idea is to be able to integrate with external web services. So here's the new site. And you'll see across the top are those same research kind of ideas. So define, plan, research, digest, create, revise, present and publish, and then reflect. So the idea is that students will go through those processes on the website as part of their research or homework. On the right side, we had a portlet that is kind of a quick way to get to the various resources. So we have a custom bibliography tool known as Citation Maker, and that's those 5,000 lines of JavaScript hanging around. We do both MLA and APA citations. And then we have a number of links, probably looks like 3, that go to that third-party vendor that provides all of the journal content. And they actually do a very good job, again, of doing age-appropriate kind of stuff, grouping things together, and they also provide some nice interfaces up front. So those links really take them to a completely different website. Some newspaper resources. And then in Oregon, we have a virtual reference service. So kids can actually chat through the web or using instant messaging with a reference librarian to help them with their research. Actually, anybody can use it, but we just point to it from the site as well. And then some additional tutorials. Some of them are provided by the vendor, who's known as EBSCO, and some of them are specific to the website. This is, sorry for the kind of aspect ratio. I was trying to blow it up so it would, you guys could kind of see it. So this is the first kind of step around the plan and showing students how they can understand their research problem. So it's just right in the website, and the resources are always there. So when they're ready to actually go and do the research, it's just a click away. Probably on the lower left, you'll see there's like a back and a next, so that they can go from one research step to the next. This isn't ideal, and I'll talk a little bit about some things I think we can improve with our site towards the end, but it gets us there for now. Oh, and I should mention that that was actually the secondary, so like 6th through 12th grade website. For the elementary school, the younger set, we have a slightly more simplified process and website, just really trying to get them, to understand the very basics of getting their research project started. And we're trying to, make it more attractive and appealing to them. This actually isn't the home page. I should have, see if we can't bring that up later. And their resource portlet is customized for them. And what's really nice about that, we go back to the remember stuff where we could say, this is what we know about each registered person. So depending on if they identified with being a student or a teacher or K through 5 or 6 through 12, their portlet looks different. It's all one portlet, but depending on who you are, you'll see the links that make sense for you. So these are links that are specific to the K through 5 crowd, slightly different, not so many. They'll not use like the APA citation maker, for example. Here's an example of a student who has logged in and is looking at the My Stuff. And this is stuff that they've uploaded or created or they're linking to as part of their research process. So, like at the bottom is an external link. It looks like they actually received an assignment from one of their instructors. So again, this is just meant to be kind of like their personal space where they can keep track of their assignment. They can jot down notes in a new Plone page, or they can link to something that's going to be useful to them, including images and things. Okay. While the focus was primarily towards the students, we didn't want to leave the teachers behind by any stretch of the imagination, and so it was still important to provide, yes?
So do you actually have the teachers email it to an email address so that it goes directly in, or did the student in that last case actually put that assignment in?
Right. So the question was, is it the students putting in the assignment or the teachers, like through email or something? And currently it's the students, I believe. A big part of this was to make sure that down the road we could do those kinds of things. So again, knowing what school they're with and or what class they're with in their membership sign up is very important. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely doable. So in addition to the things that we provide for the students, we still keep the supporting materials for the teachers. And now they're also empowered to contribute to the site, either in their own area, if they have class-specific things that they want to do, or to the main website itself. We use the workflow thing so that the oversight by the content team, by the OSLIS committee, can actually decide if that's something they want in the main site, or they can say, no, this is really just kind of pertinent to your class and not to all teachers in the state. It's a bit challenging because, again, they're not up to speed on technology, and you tell them that you can add something to the website, and they go, ah! So that's why it's really important that they still have their own space so that they know they can put stuff there and nobody else can see it, so it's okay. And also, it's really hard because for them, change is often bad. I mean, it's not something that's bad, it's just hard because for 3 or 4 years now, they've known the old site, so they can just do it, right? That wasn't true when they first got it, of course, and they've already forgotten that was the case. But now we've rolled out a new site, and they're all like, well, the old site worked fine. Why did you have to change it? So we actually have the old site still available under a different URL, but it's been kind of an interesting launch over the last 6 months. And, and it's hard for teachers to stay in the loop with something that's like run at the state level, and here they are in their own little middle school, trying to keep the wheels of, education turning. And so they may not have gotten the notification that, hey, things have changed. And we had, in fact, a teacher screaming email on a Saturday going, I've got to teach this on Monday and everything's different, and of course none of us are working on Saturday. So definitely some bumps in the road with, kind of creating a new site. This is what it looks like for the teachers. A lot more print, of course. We expect, hopefully, the teachers are willing to stop and read and figure out how they can use the site now. And then, of course, on the left, the links are, they pretty much have access to all of the links, so they can know what's going on with their students. So this is kind of the splash page for the secondary educators. Here's an example of kind of lower down in a page where they're working with their students on the planning part of the research. And here we've uploaded all of this content. A lot of it came from the previous site. Some new stuff was added. You'll notice that a lot of this is actually PDFs or rich text. And that's because teachers are still in the print world, like it or not. And so instead of like beating their heads over with just click on this link to get the page, they're like, no, give me something I can print and, kind of point at when I'm talking to them. So a lot of files get uploaded to this website. So did we actually meet our goals with rolling out this new site? I would say it's kind of a mixed success. We're definitely more student focused, but I don't think we're quite where we wanted to be, given our brainstorming sessions and things. Teachers still have their supporting materials, and now they can also upload additional ones. We have a content team, actually, and that's pretty huge because we didn't have that before, and we had that whole bottleneck thing going on. So now we have folks that come from the instructional environment that can actually improve the content on the site. And there's some level of personalization. We haven't fully implemented the school affiliation and things like that, but that's all doable. So yeah, still things to do. We haven't quite enabled, for some reason, there's something going on with, I think, Remember, that students aren't quite yet able to share things with other students automatically or explicitly yet. We haven't incorporated any web services, I'm sad to say, but I think it'd be kind of cool, if somewhere on the OSLA site in their profile it said, I'm currently researching this, and somehow that showed up on their Facebook account if they wanted it to. So, just those kind of fun little things that we could probably do. Trying to get students to do multimedia presentations probably isn't going to be the hard part. It's probably getting the teachers to buy into that, because, how do you actually do video and get all that uploaded and stuff like that. But all of that is actually there in place if they wanted to. That citation maker, that bibliography tool, as I said, it's all in that JavaScript, so we really want to get that ported to Python. We have no idea what that's going to look like, so kind of on the bottom of the list, but everyone's screaming for it. So next up for us, we actually have some staff changes going on internally, which is always challenging. The person who was with us, who did all the training to launch the last site in about 2005, has retired. And so we're bringing on a brand new person. The good news is it's now going to be a full-time position, whereas previously been a half-time, so we're all really happy about that. We're going to have to do some training for teachers and librarians. And we're looking at doing it a couple of different ways, because previously our school librarian consultant literally ran around the state and did that, which was actually good in the sense that it wasn't just training, it was also marketing. So the marketing piece has kind of been taken care of. Pretty much everybody knows about the OSLA's website. What they don't know is necessarily how to use the new one. So we're thinking we can do fewer in-person and hopefully some live webcasts and some video tutorials. Down the road, we definitely need to do some content analysis. some of the challenges with this were that our school librarian, while she gets the web and stuff, she had a hard time getting the big picture of how all of the content should fit together. So there's some things we can do there to improve the experience for everybody, actually. And then way down the road, some things we definitely want to look at are doing some content research. So, you know, what are some new tools or ways of helping students do research? The usage analysis. We, of course, using Google Analytics, so that will give us some really good clues as to what parts of the website are being used more than others and what would be valuable. We want to do some usability testing, both with teachers and students, and we want to start soliciting some feedback from both as well through surveys and things like that. And I think, yeah, that's kind of it. Yes?
Do you have your students register every year because they're going to change grades, hopefully?
I think it depends on how that could work. And actually the whole user management thing is kind of up in the air since we're in our first year. We haven't totally solved it yet. But yeah, you could go either, there are a couple different ways you could approach that, right? The student could go with the site and maybe just update their grade level or their class affiliation. Or we could purge all of the students and all of their content and have them start over every year. And I don't think we've decided yet which way we're going to take. Do students get to?
Do their user IDs get removed?
We haven't quite decided yet what we're going to do with that, with their user IDs. So do students get to keep their user ID as they go through school, or do we just purge everything at the end of each year? And I think that's going to be a good question for the new school librarian consultant. Yes, over. Oh.
I wonder if you are interested in exchanging experience through the web, because I'm working on a similar project in Italy.
Oh, okay.
And we would like to exchange, let's say, to make some tool also for the languages. And
Oh, yes.
to make people, to make students help themselves through the web
Right.
learning languages.
Oh, that's an excellent, interesting idea,
Perhaps
yeah.
I'll give you my card later.
Yes,
but
definitely.
I would like to know if you are interested in it.
I don't know that my agency would be, because we have very limited resources. Like, I get paid through federal funds. So every year it's kind of like, oh yeah, I still have a job, yay. So we really have to limit what we can focus on. But I would definitely be happy to talk about ways that,
And I had some tools, especially on content analysis.
oh, okay.
That could be also useful.
Oh,
for
excellent.
that's already
Yeah, yeah.
Something could be exchangeable.
Yeah, you know, we should definitely talk. Good. You had a question?
I just wanted to get some idea of what kind of technical resources you devoted to the project.
Oh, yes. You know, somehow I deleted a slide. Thanks for asking. In-house, we don't have any Plone development experience. Like I said, I'm pretty much the Plone expert, and I'm not a developer. So we actually did an RFP and outlined a lot of those priorities that I mentioned earlier. And we selected a developer that was actually not too far from us, though we were open to bids from anywhere in the world. And that worked out pretty well.
Just one developer?
Yeah, one developer that was working on this and some other projects. So it took a little bit longer than we liked. But at the same time, coming from corporate IT and things, I feel like we're really lucky because no one's, where is it, because schools kind of move slowly, libraries move kind of slowly, so it's a different pace. So I wasn't stressed about it, but the gal that was actually the school librarian consultant who was in charge of the project, of course, she's very type A, and so I'm like, calm down, it's okay. So yeah, I mean, you can go all about, working with external developers and things like that, but overall, we're pretty happy.
About how many man hours?
I couldn't tell you off. It was a flat bid since.
Dollars?
Yeah, and I don't actually remember now. Yeah, it was not, for us it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't extraordinarily expensive because we don't have a ton of money. But But one of the things, and I would recommend this, if you are looking to use external developers, try and outline what you think the plan should be, you know, at a high level. Call those your milestones and have payments at those milestones rather than by hour, you know, if you can get folks to bid that way. Oftentimes what will happen on a bid like that is they will tell you what, you'll have your laundry list, and then they'll tell you what you can do at this price and what you can do at that price. And so, you know, it's a kind of a negotiation that can happen during the RFP process. So, other questions? Yes. Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm just curious about the use of the site and training. You know, you're talking about training the faculty and librarians to use it. Do the students just come into the site and they just know how to do this stuff now? Or you kind of training to get them to actually add a page in a Plone
Right.
site?
You know, and that's a really good question. And I personally, because again, I'm more the Plone person that helped them launch the project, and then so I'm not directly doing the training and getting, you know, all of the feedback that's been coming in so far. So I don't know. Honestly, I couldn't say if students are just diving in and having at it, or if they're having problems yet. But that's an excellent question. I will find out, and I will add, you know what, I can add it to the presentation, because I'm sure this will get uploaded as well to the plone.org site. So excellent question, thank you.
We're in a situation where we're wondering how the training is going to
Yeah.
implement this stuff.
Well, while I can't talk to the K through 12 crowd, what I can tell you again is with my other project, we give public library staff a pre-built website based on Plone, and because it's focused on small and rural libraries, like, you know, 100 or so miles away from me, I often do the training over the phone. You know, so we're both looking at the website. I step them through it, and it takes about 2 hours to get pretty much through all the basic training. So I would imagine that, you know, and you know, the neat thing about kids, they'll click on anything. You know, so I would imagine that they're clicking on add and going, oh, what's this? And they add it. And I'm sure there's a gazillion pieces of cruft on this site, just because they start the process of adding something and then they, you know, abandon it because, oh, well, there's something else, you know. So, yeah. I think we're just kind of heading into that, you know, how do you make sure the kids are using it? How do you clean up after them and all that kind of stuff? Yes. You know what'll happen, of course, is a teacher will take them to the computer lab. Yeah, and 30 of them will do it. And oftentimes, you know, and we have no control over class schedules or any of that stuff. We just put up the portal and then the schools go access it. So it's not uncommon that several classrooms will hit the site. I'm a little concerned because I don't think we should be in the web hosting business, and that's what we're doing right now, both with this project and this public library project. So it may be that down the road we decide to go with an external hosting provider, just to take care of that initial, you know, infrastructure piece that I don't think we should waste our time on. So, any other questions? Even questions that I could, you know, add to the presentation, answers I could add later? So I would encourage you to go there. Anybody can go in, log in, poke around, see what's going on. I didn't cover the, you know, what the membership or registration piece looked like, because it's basically just a form and some extra fields and things like that. Pretty boring stuff. So.
Other than Remember, did you pick up any other interesting add-ons for the site?
You know, I would say the typical ones that will probably get used down the road are going to be like Plone Board for a forum. You know, pretty standard stuff. We're going to probably look at the best way to do multimedia, which will probably be Plone for Artists kind of stuff. Yeah, so I mean, you know, if you're familiar with Plone and been to a couple of conferences, this is kind of old hat. But I think what's great about it is all the different ways those same products can be applied to different settings. So, anything else? Well, great. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate you coming.